Zita of Bourbon-Parma was the wife of Charles I, the last monarch of Austria-Hungary. As such, she was the last Empress of Austria and Queen of Hungary. During her long life, she reigned as Empress of Austria and Queen of Hungary, survived the collapse of monarchical rule in the heart of Europe, spent decades in exile, lived through 2 world wars, witnessed astonishing technological and social changes, and managed to survive all vicissitudes by living as a widow for 67 years and raising 8 children. Zita of Bourbon-Parma was born in Villa Borbone della Pianura in Italy on May 9, 1892, as the daughter of Robert I, Duke of Parma and a descendant of Bourbon kings, and his second wife, Maria Antonia, who was a member of the Portuguese royal family. She was named after Saint Zita, a 13th century Tuscan saint. Her father had 12 children from his previous marriage and another 12 with Maria Antonia. Zita was the 17th child among Duke Robert's 24 children. Several of Zita's siblings were disabled, which was one of the reasons why she learned to support the needy and became socially sensitive. Zita grew up in a family in which several languages were spoken, and her upbringing was shaped by strict Catholic principles. Her childhood was spent partly at the Villa Borbone della Pianura in Camaiore and partly at Schwarzau Castle in Lower Austria. She recalled, "We grew up internationally. My father thought of himself first and foremost as a Frenchman and spent a few weeks every year with the elder children at Chambord, his main property on the Loire. I once asked him how we should describe ourselves. He replied, 'We are French princes who reigned in Italy.' In fact, of the 24 children, only 3, including me, were actually born in Italy." At the age of 10, Zita was sent to a boarding school at Zangberg in Upper Bavaria, where she received strict religious education. Later, she completed her schooling at the monastery of Saint Cecile on the Isle of Wight. Zita and Archduke Charles of Austria saw each other as children on a few occasions during the get-togethers of the larger family. Zita's maternal aunt, Archduchess Maria Theresa of Austria, was also Charles's step-grandmother. It was through her that Charles and Zita got reintroduced 10 years after their previous meeting at the Archduchess's imperial home in Lower Austria, Villa Wartholz. At this time, Archduke Charles was the second in line to the throne after his uncle, Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Zita married Archduke Charles of Austria in 1911 when she was 19 years old. They had a happy and loving marriage from which 8 children were born. However, the following years were full of challenges and trials. On June 28, 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophie were assassinated by a Bosnian Serb terrorist. The tragedy not only sparked World War I, it also led to Charles becoming first in line to the throne of Austria-Hungary. Within 2 years of raging war and following the death of his grand-uncle, Emperor Franz Joseph, Charles ascended to the throne. Charles and Zita became Emperor and Empress of Austria, and on December 30, 1916, were crowned as King Charles IV and Queen Zita of Hungary in Budapest. During the war years, Zita became a loyal and supportive consort to her husband, whom she accompanied to the provinces and to the front. She also took on charitable work and hospital visits to the war wounded. The war years were personally difficult for Zita. Several of her cousins fought on opposing sides of the conflict. In 1917, as the war was dragging towards its 4th year, Zita was trying hard to help Charles in his efforts to end the war and seek peace with the Allies. She solicited the help of her brother Zita of Bourbon-Parma in the efforts for Austria-Hungary to make a separate peace pact with France. Sadly, the initiative failed, and Zita was vilified as a traitor by German nationalists because of her Bourbon descent. However, she realized a personal achievement during these difficult times by stopping the German plans to send airplanes to bomb the home of the King and Queen of Belgium on their name days. Despite all efforts to save the monarchy, the war took a heavy toll on the empire, which collapsed in 1918. The Austrian monarchy came to an end on November 11, 1918, with the establishment of a republic the following day. Hungary declared its independence from Austria, and the Hungarian People's Republic was proclaimed on November 16, 1918. Charles and Zita were forced to go into exile. They hoped to restore the monarchy with the support of some Hungarian aristocrats, but they faced strong opposition from Regent Miklós Horthy and the Allied powers. They attempted to reclaim the Hungarian throne on 2 occasions, but both attempts failed and they were exiled from Hungary and Austria for good. On October 31, 1921, the former imperial couple were taken by train to the south of Hungary, from where they were shipped to Madeira on board of a British Royal battleship. They arrived at Funchal, Madeira on November 19th. Their children joined them in February 1922. Even after Charles's fall from power, Zita continued to be his most important source of support. But more hardship awaited the former imperial family. Only a couple of months later, in April 1922, Charles caught a cold which developed into bronchitis and progressed to severe pneumonia. Having suffered 2 heart attacks, he died of respiratory failure on April 1st in the presence of Zita, who was pregnant with their 8th child. Zita was left a widow at the age of 30 with 8 children to raise. She never remarried and remained faithful to her husband's memory. She only wore black clothes for the rest of her life, for all the 67 remaining years. She never gave up hope for the restoration of the monarchy and supported her son Otto's claim to the Hungarian throne. Zita faced many hardships in her exile. She moved from country to country depending on the political situation and the generosity of her relatives and friends. She lived in Spain, Belgium, Canada, the United States, Luxembourg, Germany, and Switzerland. Yet, she was denied entry in Austria and Hungary because of her refusal to abdicate. From the early 60s, she lived a secluded life in a Catholic old-age home in Zeisers in Switzerland. At the end of her life, she was allowed entry in Austria twice, at the age of 90 to visit the grave of her daughter Adelheid, and a few months later, that of her mother. Zita died in 1989 at the age of 96 in Switzerland. She was buried next to her husband in the imperial crypt beneath the Capuchin church and monastery in Vienna after a state funeral that was attended by thousands of people. In keeping with her last wishes, her heart was buried next to that of her husband's in the new Habsburg family crypt at Muri Abbey in the northern Swiss canton of Aargau. In 2009, the Bishop of Le Mans, France, opened the diocesan process for her beatification. Zita spent several months each year at the Saint Cecile of Solesmes Abbey in the Le Mans diocese, where 3 of her sisters served as nuns. In the same year, 2009, the Association for the Beatification of Empress Zita was incepted, one of whose goals is to promote the values that enabled Zita to survive so many hardships and challenges in life. These noble values include fidelity and conjugal love, serenity and trust in the face of adversity, community service and devotion to helping people and children in distress, spirit of self-sacrifice, and respect for the dignity of others.